It's 1925, and a crowd gathers on a windswept hillside in Jerusalem. Mount Scopus, to be exact, a rocky ridge wedged between the Old City and the Judean desert. They've come from all over the world for a dedication ceremony. In the front rows sit dignitaries and luminaries. British statesman Lord Arthur Balfour, Chief Rabbi Abraham Cook, the poet Chaim Nachman Bialik, philosopher Martin Buber, all here to witness the dream becoming reality. Today is the inauguration of the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, the first modern research university in the land of Israel. The founders of this university dreamed big. They wanted a world-class research hub that was also deeply connected to the Jewish people's heritage. Not a carbon copy of a European university, and not a religious seminary either. Something unique, blending ancient wisdom with modern science. I recently took a stroll through the Mount Scopus campus with historian Professor Asaf Zeltzer, who showed me the very first institute established here. The Institute for Jewish Studies embodied that vision, a dialogue between old and new.
This is the first research institute of the university, the Mendel Institute, which declared itself an institution of research institutes. It was established in dialogue with two worlds, the world of Jewish studies institutes in Germany, and on the other hand, the world of the yeshivas in the land of Israel. We are neither one nor the other. We'll do things differently here in Jerusalem.
In other words, from day one, Hebrew University set out to bridge tradition and innovation. And to build this bridge, the founders enlisted some of the greatest minds of the age. One of them was Albert Einstein, already a global celebrity in 1925, who lent not just his fame, but his active involvement to the new university. Professor Zeltzer notes that Einstein's fingerprints were all over Hebrew University's early years.
Einstein
is an important figure because he was involved with the university from its inception. He didn't exactly love the nationalist idea, mind you, but he understood that the Jewish people have strength and capability, so he needed to support them in creating the framework. Therefore, he was very involved in choosing the faculty members. Einstein's trip to America with Chaim Weizmann, those famous photographs of him on the ship, that was actually Einstein's first time in America, and it was in order to raise money for the Hebrew University. In other words, he was connected to it from the start, somewhat ideologically, but mainly operationally, even decided who would be here. In fact, he also served as editor of the university's first academic journal, and had the privilege of delivering the first academic lecture.
I know no public event which has given me such delight as the proposal to establish a Hebrew University in Jerusalem, Einstein wrote in his diary in 1921, as the plans were gaining traction. And he wasn't the only one. The Hebrew University was championed by Jewish luminaries like Dr. Chaim Weizmann, who would become Israel's first president, and cultural icons like Chad Ha'am, Bialik, and Buber. At the opening ceremony on April 1st, 1925, Menachem Usishkin, a Zionist leader, stood up and declared in Hebrew, "May this house on Mount Scopus be a house of science for all nations." The crowd of thousands erupted in applause. It was as if they understood that this moment was bigger than any one community. They hoped this new university would not only advance knowledge for the Jewish people, but also share it with the world. Welcome to The View from Mount Scopus, a podcast from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. I'm your host, Gilad Halpern. And in this series, we blend the past and present, much like the founders intended. In each episode, we'll travel through time, from the university's history to its latest innovations. In this first episode, we're focusing on food and agriculture. Nearly a century after that inaugural ceremony, the Hebrew University's original vision of combining knowledge with real-world impact is still driving groundbreaking work, especially when it comes to feeding a growing population. From the very beginning, the people building the Hebrew University knew that science had to address practical needs. Nowhere was this more true than in agriculture. In the 1920s, the idea of making the desert bloom wasn't just a metaphor. It was literally about survival. If a new Jewish community and a future state was to take root in Palestine, it would have to find ways to grow food in harsh conditions and use every resource wisely. And indeed, not long after the university's founding, a dedicated Faculty of Agriculture was established to do exactly that.
To the Hebrew University School of Agriculture. The importance of this school to a community who must wrest a living from the soil cannot be overemphasized. Here you see students in the gardens of the School of Agriculture and at the research station of the Jewish Agency. These boys and girls are preparing to be the instructors and research workers in the tremendously important field of Palestinian agriculture. Here are some students at work in the laboratory. Here is an outdoor class with another famous faculty member, Professor Volcanic, Dean of the Faculty of Agriculture. To him, all Zion owes an unending debt of gratitude, for it is he who was the father of scientific agriculture in modern Eretz Israel.
Today that mission continues, from smart greenhouses that save water to molecular studies of taste that could transform our foods. We are in Rehovot, about 30 miles from Mount Scopus, at the Robert H. Smith Faculty of Agriculture, Food and Environment. We're standing in what looks like an ordinary greenhouse. Sunlight filters through the plastic roof, long aisles stretch from one end to the other, but upon closer inspection it is actually a laboratory. Rows of plants, tomatoes, wheat and what have you, sit in high-tech containers wired with sensors. The air is warm and humid, you can hear water pumps and the hum of ventilation fans. Food security, a growing concern as the climate crisis continues to bite, is what researchers here and their technology are seeking to ensure. The man showing us around is Professor Menachem Moshe Leon, an expert in plant molecular physiology. He's surrounded by graduate students and young researchers, but he's clearly in charge and clearly passionate about plants.
My name is Menachem Moshe Leon. I'm a researcher at the Faculty of Agriculture of the Hebrew University. Our lab is focused on understanding how plants respond to their environment. When you study agriculture, especially crops, you want to understand what is the optimum environment where they react. Of course, in this environment, they will respond the best and produce the best. Plants, in fact, sensing their environment every minute. They sense the light, the CO2, the water. They know if they have affected by diseases. And what we try to understand is first what the plant sense, and when we understand this, we will try to improve the plant or their condition or genetically the plant themselves.
How is what you're doing different from modern agriculture? I mean, the fact that there are greenhouses and controlled agriculture, this was in a way a mechanism to cope with everything that you said about stress.
Absolutely. Modern agriculture, we have it for years. But you know, it's like modern medicine, right? You go to the pharmacy today and you get a pill. But I will go, we get the same pill. My wife will go, get the same pill. And in the recent years, we talk about personalized medicine, right? So in the recent years, we understood that, okay, we can sell a pill that will be on average fit to all. But it's much better to give each one its own medicine based on its own DNA. And this is something that started happening, right? People start to get different pills, different medicines based on their own specific genetics and specific physiology. And this is much better. And this is exactly what we try to do. Of course, there are fields and greenhouses, but it's not optimum, it's average. And on average, you get a good results. But we want to get to the personalized level.
Think about it. Every minute, a plant is checking how much sun, water, and nutrients it's getting, like a silent conversation with its surroundings. Professor Moshe Leon's team wants to eavesdrop on that conversation and then use it to help plants thrive. Here, in the greenhouse, he and his students have built a system to do exactly that. It's essentially a stress test for plants, a bit like a treadmill stress test is for a human heart. But in this case, they can stress the plants with drought, heat, salt in the soil, even diseases, all in a controlled, data-tracked way. Menachem shows me a cluster of instruments attached to a row of potted plants, tubes, sensors, and a computer interface.
So this is our functional phenotyping system. What you can see here, this funny looking apparatus is called a lysimeter or weight scale. This system belonged to a company named Plant Array. It's an Israeli company that actually developed this phenotyping system that enables you to measure the plant's response to the environment. You can see this nice pepper plant. You see, this is a commercial plant. You can buy this in the market. You can touch it. It
Looks like a pepper.
it is a pepper. And it's the same variety. It's called Cannon. It's the same variety that grows now in the Arava. We grow the exact same cultivar as the farmers because we want to understand exactly the real problems of a farmer. So this greenhouse that we're standing now is actually a simple greenhouse. As you see, no artificial light, no artificial temperature, because these are the exact conditions that the farmer grows. Now, here you see all this array of plants, all of them being monitored all the time using this plant array system, and you see these sensors that we saw in the lab first. These are now measuring and transducing all the data to our computers. So all the data is being collected to this computer. You can see this is the computer that controls the system, irrigate the plants. Everything is fully automatic. Each plant gets exactly the amount of water and mineral we want it to get. And we get the data back. This comes from the floor system, and all the other sensors actually measure via this system here. So all together we collect all of the data, and it's combined directly to the internet, and we can actually see it from the office. So we don't have to literally be here. We can get all the data from the cloud. So we get all the physiological profile of the plant from one end. We see how much transpiration it does. We can see how much it grows. We can see if it was well irrigated or not. So we get all the data, and we can control it. So we can say, hey, let's give them drought, or let's put some salinity in the solution, or let's do whatever we want to do. Let's change the velocity of the fans or the temperature in the greenhouse. This is for the data, and from the other end, we get the data and put it in machine learning tools, so to get some knowledge out of this data.
So about these 30-something pepper plants that we have here, like what sort of thing did you change and what did you learn?
In this plant, we just changed temperature and humidity. In the greenhouse we're going to see now, we also change nutrients, drought, salinity. And in the greenhouse of Shani, we actually infect the plants deliberately with some diseases we get from Dr. Shai Scopus' lab. He is a professional scientist, expert in diseases. So we just give us the disease, and we infect the plants deliberately, so we can understand how the plant really responds to a known disease.
Shani Friedman is one of Menachem's PhD students who joined us on that day. I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Shani. I'm a PhD student at Menachem's lab. Very early on in my agriculture studies, I understood how plant diseases are a huge impact on economy and agriculture. So much money is spent into pesticides and management and inspecting the plants and making sure the yield is good. So I really wanted to integrate plant diseases with my PhD. And I came to Menachem. He's a physiologist of the plant. I asked him, can we do something with plant diseases? And he's open-minded, and he said yes. So we started using Menachem's system, the plant array that you'll see soon, to monitor plant diseases. And what we found that the system can very early on detect diseases, even before what was used traditionally, that visual symptoms. So we understood that very early on, we can detect the disease by physiological parameters before visual symptoms appear. Usually people come to the field and see the leaves are wilting, or there's spots on the leaves, or something is going on with the plant. But we could find physiological symptoms like increase in transpiration and increase in growth. And this happened much before the visual symptoms. And this can help also manage the disease, also isolate the diseased plant, And additionally, we found that we can quantify the disease, meaning we can tell you how stressed the plant is and how severe is the illness or how much susceptible is the plant. This is a huge tool that we can use for also research in agriculture and also agro-industry.
This kind of early warning system could save farmers millions by stopping diseases before they even spread. And it's not just about catching problems early, it's about making every drop of water count. Nir Averbuch, one of Professor Moshe Leon's PhD students, explains.
Hello, my name is Nir Averbuch. I'm a PhD student in Menachem Moshe Leon lab. My research is focused on how spatial and temporal differences in meteorological parameters, like temperature, humidity, solar radiation, affect plants differently, which means different area in the greenhouse is sensing a bit different temperature, humidity. From one end to the different side, there could be almost 8 degrees difference in the midday. So the plants, as Menachem said previously, sensing different atmosphere. Those react differently. And we're trying to capture that and understand how much water they will evaporate at different times of the day.
How do they react differently?
There is a special part in the plant called stomata. The stomata is area in the plant that can close and open gate, let's call it. And through this area, it can evaporate water. So when plants sense higher temperature, they can close and open the stomata. So plants which are in cooler area might stay open, and plants that are in hotter area can close the stomata because they are sensing, let's say, danger or stress.
Essentially, each plant has a gate that controls how much water and carbon dioxide it takes in. Understanding how this gate works is critical to figuring out how plants survive droughts or heat waves. Israel is a country that's over 60% desert, with scarce water and tough soil. From its early days, it had to innovate to grow food. Drip irrigation, hybrid crops, water recycling. What Professor Moshe Leon and his team are doing in this greenhouse is an adaptation of that story to the 21st century, to the encroaching effects of climate change, the dwindling of open spaces due to population growth. When the Faculty of Agriculture was set up, the leaders of the Jewish community in Palestine, David Ben-Gurion and others, were taught that the country could feed up to 1 million people. Today, thanks to all the scientific innovation, it can feed close to 10 million. And the impact goes far beyond Israel's borders. The data and discoveries from this greenhouse are being shared with scientists and farmers worldwide, from California to India. Anyone facing climate stress on their crops.
The Faculty of Agriculture basically is a biology faculty, right? We study the very basic mechanism of life from plant, animals, and so on and so forth. But in the end, we go one step further. We go to the applicative step. This is why so many seed companies start from this, irrigation companies, food companies, the cultivated meat, milk. Some of those started here because you have to really understand the cell biology and the biochemistry and the physics of things. But then the research say, hey, I have an idea. Maybe we can make some patent out of it. And I think Faculty of Agriculture is one of the faculty that has more patents because we are very close to the applicative side. Because we work with problems, many of us work with problems of the day-to-day, right? You see the problem, you have the tools to understand it scientifically, and many times you can step one step forward and try to go to the applicative way. Also, the research you heard here, I think Shani's dream is to develop some way of early detection of disease. Maybe Nir's one is to develop a self-irrigated or individual irrigated system that can irrigate each plant by its need. Maybe it sounds futuristic, but this is what we're aiming for.
After walking through rows of quietly breathing plants and listening to the greenhouse's hum, we step outside into the sunshine. It's time to zoom in from the scale of fields and crops to the personal scale of flavor, of taste. Our next story takes us from the greenhouse to the kitchen, and from agriculture to gastronomy. But first, a word from our sponsors.
The view from Mount Scopus is made possible by American Friends of the Hebrew University. Established in 1925, AFHU has provided over a century of partnership and support to Israel's leading institution of higher learning. To learn more, visit afhu.org.
We're in a cozy kitchen in a home just outside Jerusalem. Professor Masha Niv is at the counter next to her husband Avner. Masha is a leading researcher in taste chemistry at the Hebrew University's Faculty of Agriculture. Avner Niv is a chef by training and a lecturer in wine and food. There's a pot of coffee brewing, the aroma fills the air, and I'm served cookies and a lemon pie that, I made sure to ask, were baked by Masha. Together, Masha and Avner make quite the pair. One investigates taste with scientific rigor, the other with culinary artistry. Together, they've invited me to experience how taste works on multiple levels. So what is taste to a chef?
Hi, my name is Avner Niv. I'm a lecturer at the Faculty of Agriculture. I'm a lecturer for wine and for food. The whole perspective of food and taste is definitely a very, very complicated issue. I would say it involves the sense of the actual taste of food, but of course there is the smell and also the ears and the feeling of the food. So there are all kind of sensory that involve the taste.
Okay, I get the mouth, I get the nose.
Right.
But where do the ears and the mind come in?
Well, of course, when you cut into, for example, if you cut into fresh bread or fresh baked good, you hear it. You hear the crispiness, and especially for me, if I cut like a baguette, and I don't hear the crispiness, I know it's not a good baguette, for example, right? Or if you have a very good fish and you cut into the fish. You have this. I know it's difficult to amount it or to put it into words, but you have this thing of the exact the way you slice it. But maybe it's because I'm a chef and I work with food so much on a daily basis. I get it.
Where Avner brings an intuitive grasp of flavor, Masha approaches it through science. She pours us each a cup of tea fresh out of the garden and explains that even something as familiar as coffee is chemically very complex.
There are some things that are more simple, that they really have like a few key components that define the taste. Coffee is very complicated. So coffee, for example, there are like over 400 different compounds that contribute to its taste.
400 compounds in a cup of coffee, and that's just one beverage. Wine, another specialty of Avner's, is a whole different story. Masha tells us that humans have around 5 basic taste modalities, that is sweet, bitter, sour, salty, and umami. But behind each taste is a flurry of molecules and a specialized receptor in our taste buds detecting those molecules. As a computational chemist, Masha set out to map this hidden world of flavor molecules. When she started her lab at Hebrew University, she chose to focus on one of the most puzzling taste modalities, bitterness. Why bitter? Because bitterness is actually incredibly complex. Our bodies have 25 different bitter taste receptors, far more than for sweet, for example, and nobody had catalogued all the bitter molecules out there. So Masha Niv decided to change that.
The reason I chose bitter taste is because there are 25 different bitter taste receptors in the human body, and now we have over 2,000 bitter molecules that we gather in our BitterDB database. But when I started, there was like no database. It was just, there are many molecules. It was something kind of general. So on one hand, it was complex enough, but probably not as complicated as smell, because, it was still just one taste.
BitterDB. Yeah, that's what it's called. It became a central resource for scientists around the world. By collecting and computationally analyzing thousands of bitter compounds, Professor Niv and her team are uncovering patterns. Why certain molecules taste bitter, how those taste receptors each respond differently, and even what other roles those receptors play in the body. This research has some sweet potential outcomes.
The food industry is very interested in bitterness inhibition and in sweetness enhancement, right? So we actually have very cool research now that several directions. So one of the things that we have recently found in a collaborative project, that one of the receptors for bitter taste, in addition to having a binding pocket for the ligands that can bind for this to sense the outside of the cell, it actually has an additional pocket, and it can also probably sense with this additional pocket inside the cell. So this is a very surprising finding, because the whole idea of these receptors was thought to be, it sits at the membrane, it senses what's happening outside. But now we found, using cryo-EM, cryo-electron microscopy technology, the structure of the receptor together with the molecule found both at the top and the bottom.
The top and the bottom
of the receptor.
Of the receptor. Okay.
So now it means that we have now a completely new place where we can try to find inhibitors. We already found inhibitors. So this is like a completely novel way of inhibiting these receptors. So this is one exciting direction.
Has it been tried already?
We did find inhibitors, and we are now characterizing where exactly they bind. So it could be complicated, it could be both. This is what we are looking into now.
So basically it will allow us to engineer
additional, well, yeah, I don't know if it's really engineer taste, but additional ways of blocking bitter taste.
Imagine medicine that doesn't taste awful. A bitter cough syrup that a child can take without making a face because a bitterness blocker was added. Or consider healthy foods like broccoli or grapefruit that some people avoid due to bitterness. What if we could tone that down just enough to make them more appealing, without losing nutrition? On the flip side, understanding sweet taste at the molecular level could help create better sugar substitutes, ones that satisfy our sweet tooth without the calories or aftertaste.
The sugar reduction, of course, is important for weight management.
Because if you decrease bitterness, you'll need less sugar.
Sugar remains to be a very attractive taste, and if we are able to obtain sweet perception without actually using so much sugar, then it would be better for us. So we have various ideas and directions and tools to actually look at combinations of different compounds and to look for enhancement of sweetness. So replacement is one option, but another option is what would happen if you combine one sweetener with another, or sugar with something else, or you do other tricks so that altogether it is perceived as more sweet.
Masha's eyes light up as she describes a recent project. During the COVID-19 pandemic, many people lost their sense of taste and smell. Her lab analyzed data from patients to see how the virus was affecting taste receptors.
So I think here the contribution was important, because if you have it, you might think it's like that. But if you lose it, it's really a big problem, because it affects the appetite, it affects well-being, it affects the mood. And I think especially in this case, to really ring the bells and say, no, it's a real problem that really affects people's lives. And it should be treated as such. And I think in this we did contribute to kind of, bringing in and publishing several papers, and really documented also how broadly. In the first paper, we held 40,000 participants worldwide, and it really put it on the table. It's a really big survey with a lot of people being affected. But there are cultural differences, because in Italy and France, it was clear to everyone that it's very important. There was no question about it, right? In Israel, it was different. In Israel, you had to convince, no, that person is really suffering. Like I'm sure in Russia it would be also like that. Okay, so you don't have so what's the problem?
Speaking with Masha and Avner, you get the sense that taste is this beautiful intersection of art and science. One moment, Avner is describing the perfect balance of flavors in a gourmet dish. The next, Masha is describing the receptor binding affinities of a bitter compound. And it all connects. Each new discovery in Masha's lab could influence what ends up on our plate in a few years. Each chef's insight, like Avner's, can and often does spark a new scientific question.
I think for the food industry, it's of course crucial, right? We did like a large big data analysis of reviews that people submitted on Amazon food products and iHerb food products. So it was like a million of reviews, and in 60% of these reviews, words related to taste appeared, and then texture-related words. And then only later, like price and things like this. So for food industry, it's really life-saving for them, right? Like it's really important.
Way before Israel became known as the startup nation, it was the farming nation. The first physical expressions of Zionism in the late 19th century were agricultural settlements like Rosh Pina and Zichron Yaakov, and even Rehovot itself, once a powerhouse of the citrus industry. Agricultural know-how has for decades been a major Israeli export, and today, combined with cutting-edge technology, it continues to be a big draw for people from across the developing world who come here to learn how to grow more for less. A group of students stand in a field of tomatoes in Rehovot, but they hail from all over the globe: Nigeria, India, Vietnam, Guatemala, you name it. They are part of the Hebrew University's International School of Agricultural Sciences, a program that started in the late 1980s with a simple but powerful idea: share Israel's agricultural know-how with countries that need it. Every year, dozens of professionals and postgraduates from Asia, Africa, Latin America and Eastern Europe come to the Faculty of Agriculture to study everything from desert irrigation and sustainable horticulture to agribusiness and food security. Classes are in English and there are hands-on internships on Israeli farms. And when these students return home, they carry more than just a diploma. They carry tools and techniques that can transform their communities. Over the years, alumni of the program have gone on to do amazing things. We've seen graduates start water-saving irrigation projects in drought-prone regions of Africa, introduce high-yield crop varieties in villages in Southeast Asia, and rise to leadership positions in their home countries. What's beautiful about all this is how it all circles back to the Hebrew University's founding vision. Remember Usishkin's hope in 1925 that the university on Mount Scopus would be a house of science for all nations? This international agriculture program is exactly that in action. Even Albert Einstein, when he traveled to raise funds for the university, spoke about it becoming a center of learning for all peoples. A century later, those words are coming true in ways that he probably never imagined. We return now to where we began, Mount Scopus 100 years ago. It's fascinating to think of those early visionaries, scientists, scholars, leaders, standing on this hill in 1925, looking out over Jerusalem and dreaming of the future. They hoped for a university that would produce world-class knowledge and also solve real-world problems. They hoped it would draw people from around the world and serve all of humanity. Did they imagine greenhouses controlled by computers to conserve every drop of water? Could they foresee databases of taste molecules and AI models predicting crop yields? Probably not. But they did set in motion the culture that made those things possible. They built an institution where innovation is coupled with purpose. It all ties back to that original spirit on Mount Scopus in 1925, and the connection runs even deeper through time. And Albert Einstein, who helped launch the university, in the end, he offered one final gift to the institution that he helped create.
איינשטיין יחזור אל האוניברסיטה רק בצבא איתו.
Einstein returned to the university in his will when he bequeathed all of his intellectual property to the university, which became the owner of his archive.
Indeed, to this day, the Hebrew University is home to the Albert Einstein archives. Thousands of documents, letters, and notebooks from one of the greatest minds in history, entrusted to this institution. It's a powerful symbol. The man who helped envision this university left his legacy in its safekeeping. It's as if he knew that future generations of students and researchers here would carry on the work of discovery. Standing on Mount Scopus now, you can visit the original inauguration site. It's quieter these days. The wind still blows, the view of Jerusalem is still stunning. If you close your eyes, you can almost hear the echoes of that dedication ceremony, the hopes and prayers spoken for this house of science. Those hopes have been realized in so many ways as we've journeyed from 1925 to today's cutting-edge research. But the story isn't over, it's ongoing. The view from Mount Scopus is always changing with new ideas. Thank you for listening to The View from Mount Scopus. Many thanks to executive producer Talka Oz, to technical producer Leo Peleg, and the Hebrew University's Division for Advancement and External Relations and its American friends. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. It really makes a huge difference. And if you know someone who'd love this episode, go ahead and share it with them. In our next episodes, we'll explore other facets of Hebrew University's impact. We hope you'll join us again. And until then, shalom from Jerusalem, and see you next time on The View from Mount Scopus.